I'm joined by Dr. Marcin Styszyński, Institute of Oriental Studies, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan. Doctor, welcome to TVP World and thank you for taking the time.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
Good evening. Complex situation in Israel at the moment. The Prime Minister is being pulled in many directions. How do you analyse what's going on? What's your take?
You've just mentioned a couple of minutes ago about the new proposal of ceasefire, the plan which provide, of course, at first step, because it's the three steps plan. At first step is the ceasefire, then exchange of hostages, including unlimited number of Palestinian prisoners, and then finally the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip. So, of course, there are first, as you mentioned as well, first positive responses and reactions of different political sides, including Hamas. However, we may see as well some negative approaches from Israeli sides, not the government, but some members of the government, especially Ben-Gvir, for instance, who is the Minister of Security, or some opposition leaders who encourage the government to push the negotiations and the proposal, because according to their statements, is the last chance to release the hostages. However, we should remember that in the Middle East, as you also said, the situation is quite complex, and there are different responses and different reactions in the West and in the Middle East. Of course, although positive responses of Hamas, we should remember that just last week we had the terrible massacre and airstrikes of Israeli forces against Palestinian camp in Rafah. So it's in the south of the Gaza Strip, and 45 people have been killed, hundreds injured. So, and during this tragic event, Hamas reacted very negatively, and they criticized all parts and negotiators and mediators. So there are different conditions and circumstances which could affect the ongoing negotiations and further plans and proposals.
Yes, but Doctor, I mean, here's the thing. Let's fast forward. So we have a ceasefire. It's a permanent ceasefire. All these Palestinians are released from Israeli prison, many of whom have killed Israelis, maybe taken part in various terrorist atrocities. And the Israeli military pulls out. Well, Hamas is back in business and ready for the next attack on Israel, is it not?
That's a very important and good question, because, of course, the current government said that the objective regarding the neutralization of Hamas bases in the Gaza Strip are still on the table. So how we can deal with this objective and the plan which provide the stability of Hamas in the Gaza Strip as well, because unfortunately, although damages and the tragic figures of death and among within Palestinian as well Israelis, so Hamas is still the important political side in the Gaza Strip. I think the plan is to marginalize in any way Hamas and replace politically by some political forces from the Palestinian Authority. I think that's the plan of that's the Israeli plan, because policy towards the Palestinian territory are completely different from policy against Hamas. So maybe that's the objective in the future.
It may well be, but
yeah.
we have experience of Hamas killing members of the Palestinian Authority when Hamas took power, and basically, kicked them out. I don't know how likely it is that they will accept them this time. Tell me, I mean, let's bring Egypt now into the conversation. Does Egypt have a role to play? I mean, they also have a border with Gaza. Is there something that they can do to facilitate peace?
You've just mentioned an important point, because we must remember that during the last attack of Israeli forces in Rafah, it's in the south, and it's actually across the border with Egypt. So, during the fights, one of the Egyptian soldiers has been killed as well. So that's also an important point to avoid any spreading of the conflict across the borders. We should remember that the region in Egypt, especially the northern Sinai, it's also a nevralgic and important strategic region. So Egypt also tries to avoid any complications, not only in the Gaza Strip, but also its own territories. So maybe that's the plan, which aims at reducing tensions and the conflict, which actually spread not in the north as it was at the beginning, but now it's just at the border with Egypt. So
yes,
that's also important, because
You mentioned earlier, Doctor, the large number of casualties. I mean, there are a couple of things about that. First of all, we don't know how many of those were actually Hamas soldiers. We don't know how many of them were those who actually died by natural causes, because there was no distinction made. And thirdly, surely Egypt could have let some of these refugees out of Rafah, saved them from potential harm, and allowed them into Egypt. But they didn't do that. Why do you think that is?
That's, of course, a complex situation, because that's the complex situation in the northern Sinai. There are some, of course, security threats as well in the northern Sinai. Just to remember that during 2015, during some ISIS threats and some ISIS threats in the Sinai, so that's potential threats against Egypt. That's, I think, the main reason. Besides, local environments are quite complicated, and social, historical, and etc. Besides, Arab states avoid to as they call a new Nakba. Nakba in Arabic, it's a kind of we can say kind of exodus of Palestinian people, which happened in 1945. So the Arab side highlights this question to avoid a second Nakba in the region, and of course there are additional political objectives as well.
Yes.
Just to note, because we've talked about this truce and negotiations. Hopefully that we achieve this peace negotiations, because so far we've had only around 1 week. 1 week of ceasefire. It was.
Right.
Last year, just a couple of months after the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
So it was only 6 days. There was exchange of hostages and etc. And then, because of the further fights and tensions, the conflict is still ongoing.
It's still going. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, Doctor, but thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.